I have gone back and forth about whether or not I should record this, let alone release it. Because there are apparently some things that I'm perfectly comfortable telling complete strangers on the internet, but then there are also the things that make me want to throw my phone directly into the Pacific Ocean and live out the remainder of my days somewhere without Wi-Fi. And I have discovered that dividing line actually makes zero sense. I can sit here and tell you what it was like to hold my son through his very last breath. I can tell you about pediatric cancer and hospice, what happened to our family, what grief has done to us afterwards. I can sit here and talk about some of the most devastating, most intimate moments of my entire life, and somehow I can survive pressing publish. But for some reason, admitting out loud that I am currently rationing shampoo and conditioner in my house, it's mortifying. Telling you that I don't have money set aside for my daughter's 11th birthday, it's embarrassing. I would rather remove my own skin. Because apparently there is some part of my brain that thinks that child loss is an acceptable public disclosure, but being broke is where a lady should definitely maintain some mystery. And I get why. Money is weird. Money makes people very weird. Money might actually be one of the last things that Americans are embarrassed to talk about publicly and with transparency, which is incredible considering we have collectively decided that nothing is sacred or private anymore. People will post photographs from the delivery room before the placenta has even left the building. But heaven forbid you ask somebody how much debt they have, and suddenly we have crossed a boundary. I have talked about Kingston's cancer, his death, my grief, my marriage, my divorce, being banned from hospitals. I talk about motherhood, the things I regret, the woo-woo things I believe, the things I can't prove. But admitting that I need help financially feels so much different because there is a very specific type of judgment attached to being broke that is not attached to being sad. Sad can happen to you, but broke, apparently, it's just evidence that you failed some adulting exam that everybody else got the study guide for, except for me. So today I want to tell my story because I've been asking for help for a long time. Some of you have been helping since 2022 when Kingston first got re-diagnosed. Some of you helped after he died. Some of you helped when housing fell apart. Some of you have bought us groceries or sent $20 for gas, paid something or hired me to do a job or bought something I was selling, shared the fundraiser. And there are people whose names have shown up enough times that now when I see them, my first reaction is gratitude. And my second reaction is embarrassment because I think, oh my God, them again, they've already helped me. I can't possibly allow this person to continue helping me. They can't pay for one more thing. I agree with that feeling intellectually. I don't think anybody owes me endless support because my child died. I don't believe that at all. I don't think that grief is a pension plan. I don't think that the community should be responsible for financially maintaining me indefinitely because something catastrophic happened to my family. In fact, what I want more than almost anything right now is an incredibly boring paycheck. I want direct deposit. I want the 1st and the 15th. I want to get irritated about taxes. I want to stand in Ralph's and realize that we need toilet paper, conditioner, shampoo, and put all 3 into the cart at the same time like a reckless billionaire and not have to do the math. I don't want to stand there calculating which basic hygiene products has demonstrated sufficient fiscal responsibility to receive the funding this week. I want my gas tank to be filled before the little light comes on, and I want to stop owing my cousin money for the car that he sold me a year ago. I want Michael's paycheck to belong to Michael instead of having to sustain my life like a subscription for Columbia House CDs he forgot to cancel back in 1999. Those are things that I think that people don't understand when they see someone asking for help more than once. They can see the immediate emergency. Kingston had cancer. What they don't see is the long middle after the initial emergency, when everybody understandably goes back to their lives because that's what people are supposed to do, except my life didn't go back to normal. I'm Miley Navarro, and this is Honestly I'm Fine. If you're new here, my 9-year-old son Kingston died from medulloblastoma in July of 2024, 11 days before his 10th birthday. He was 3 when he was diagnosed in 2018. He lived with cancer and the consequences of cancer treatment for almost 7 years. I'm also Zuma's mom and Jaden's mom. Jaden is 25 and Zuma will turn 11 on August 31st, and she starts middle school in 10 days. I'm writing some books. I'm recording this podcast. I'm trying to build a nonprofit called the Live Like Kingston Foundation. I have been actively applying for jobs for 2 years. And because apparently my life needed another subplot, I just had emergency surgery 2 days ago. This is not going to be one of those stories where I spend 30 minutes describing horrific circumstances and then reveal that I'm secretly grateful for all of it because adversity taught me to appreciate sunsets. I appreciated sunsets way before all of this. They were available to me without pediatric cancer. I love my life in plenty of ways. I believe that Kingston remains connected to me in ways that I can't scientifically prove, and I don't require anyone listening to believe me. I am building things that matter to me because of what I learned caring for Kingston. All of that is true. It is also true that if somebody offered me a deal where I could erase every lesson and every spiritual experience, every piece of alleged personal growth, and every profound insight that I've accumulated in exchange for Kingston to walk back through the door, I would sign it so quickly that I would probably sprain something. I don't need what happened to become beautiful in order for my life to have value now. And the reason that I'm telling this story isn't because I need help, but it's because I started looking at the research around what happens financially to childhood cancer families, particularly after the child dies. And I realized the thing that I have been experiencing as this incredibly personal failure is a massive documented problem. There's an actual term for it, financial toxicity. Cancer researchers use that phrase to describe the financial distress and the economic damage associated with cancer. The National Cancer Institute talks about the loss of income, debt, difficulty paying for housing, food, the inability for parents to work, caregivers changing employment, all of it. Cancer doesn't merely attack the patient. Economically, it reorganizes the household around itself. In pediatric cancer, the parent is usually part of the treatment infrastructure. Imagine sending your child to treatment with a stranger. Not many people would choose to do that. I chose to be there. I was the caregiver. Kingston was only 3 years old when he was diagnosed with brain and spinal cancer. He wasn't an adult who could drive himself to radiation, call insurance companies, remember his medication schedule, research clinical trials, argue prior authorizations, and then stop at CVS on the way home. He wasn't even in preschool. In July of 2018, when Kingston's brain tumor was removed, it damaged something in his brain in the posterior fossa at the base of the skull, right there between the neck and the head. And he developed a complication called posterior fossa syndrome. It affects your gross and fine motor skills. He lost his speech, the ability to walk, bowel control. He lost bladder control. He couldn't eat. He couldn't swallow. His eyes wouldn't even move in the same direction at the same time. He lost control over basic bodily functions that most of us never consciously think about because our brains just do them. They gave him a 5% chance of survival when he was diagnosed in 2018. And by some miracle, he survived it. But since then, we had to put him back together. Occupational therapy, physical therapy, speech therapy, education therapy. And over the years, we've spent more than $500,000 out of pocket building a life for Kingston that was worth living. The particularly cruel part of this story is that all of the effort and all of the money was well spent. It worked. Kingston talked again. He walked again. He learned how to play baseball on a regular team, and Kingston was able to live a childhood where he didn't always feel different. But any parents who watch their child lose basic abilities will understand what I mean. Another parent watches their typical kid run across the soccer field and thinks, great job. Well, I watched him run and remembered when other people had to physically move his legs for him. You don't unknow that. When his cancer came back in September of 2022, eventually his relapse took those things from him again. By 2024, he was back in a wheelchair. He couldn't walk. And towards the end, he wasn't able to speak or eat. Eventually, it was starvation that led to his death before the cancer was able to take him out. There's something particularly vicious about watching your child lose everything twice, because the first time you're standing there telling him, we'll get it back. We're going to work. We're going to do the therapy. You've got this. Stay strong. Fight. We're going to figure it out. The second time, you already know too much. By the time Kingston died, our entire family had been organized around pediatric cancer for nearly the better half of a decade. And then he just died. Financially, you would think that would be where the expenses stop. That is absolutely adorable thinking. It is wishful thinking. It is a ridiculous idea that just because your child died, you don't have to pay for anything anymore. Research on families like ours has found that the financial damage continues after the child dies for nearly a decade. One study, researchers surveyed 176 bereaved caregivers, a median of 7 years after their child's death from cancer. And 31% said that their child's death significantly affected the family for a full decade. 23% reported decreased income after the death that lasted a half a decade, and 14% were still paying medical expenses more than 7 years later. I read that and thought, oh, so this isn't simply Miley being uniquely terrible at capitalism. I'm not just financially irresponsible. This is a real thing that happens to so many cancer families. Another 2025 study asked bereaved pediatric cancer parents what financial help they needed after their child died, and more than 50% said they needed paid time off. 37% said that they couldn't pay their rent or their mortgage, and 30% needed help with the medical bills more than half a decade after their child passed away. 28% could not afford food. Food. I'm not the only one. I had to ask for money for groceries the other day. It's crazy. And that's with a subsidy from the state already. It's simply not enough. Years of oncology and medical terminology and treatment protocols and clinical trials, and eventually we're talking about whether or not parents can pay for groceries. I'm basically a momcologist. I can do the work of an oncology nurse, but I can't afford groceries. That's the part that I need people to really hear and to understand. A parent who spent 10 years doing the work of a registered nurse that would make more than $100,000 a year cannot afford to buy groceries after her son died. While the child is still alive, there are so many systems attached to the child. They may be bureaucratic and inadequate and maddening, but they exist. There is SSI, caregiver programs like IHSS. There are charities, grants, and hospital resources, organizations specifically designed to continuously help families during treatment. When the child dies, eligibility disappears because that medical crisis is over. Meanwhile, your financial life did not receive the memo. A parent's mental health did not receive the memo. Your broken heart did not receive the layoff notice. Kingston got SSI, but because he died in the middle of the month, the payment that was issued at the beginning of the month technically should never have been issued. Kingston would get paid at the beginning of the month. So around July 5th, we received his SSI payment. And on July 18th, he passed away. That very next week after they received the information that he had passed away, they immediately garnished that money right back out of my bank account. There was no notice, no letter. I didn't even know that was a thing. We had to pay for cremation. We had to buy an urn. My heart was so broken, I couldn't breathe, but it was backed out of my account without warning. $540 had to be paid back. The minimum cost I could find in the Los Angeles area to cremate a child that weighed 30 pounds was $1,500, and you had to pay it in full. I remember sitting in my bathroom crying the day before he actually did pass away, trying to get in touch with my hospital social worker to get approved for a partial grant to help cover the cremation costs. I think it was about $300, maybe $500, but that meant I was still responsible for $1,000 that I didn't have. And even if I did have it, they turned around and took back the $540 that I thought that I had to put towards that cremation. So I essentially ended up overdrawn over $600 within days after having to pay $1,500 to have him cremated. This is a funny part of the story. I called the different crematoriums and was getting so upset because people were telling me that you couldn't pay in advance so that when he did pass, they could just come pick up his body. They told me that you can't schedule that in advance. I remember thinking, don't people buy plots of land like when their children are first born? People definitely do that in advance. So I ended up having somebody call around for me because I could not make those phone calls. That's just one more thing that we aren't even going to talk about. This episode is really about things that you wouldn't even think to do, that you don't have a choice to do, that make you want to literally hurt someone or yourself. It's maddening because you call these people to set up arrangements to have them pick up your dead 9-year-old's body, and they're just doing a job that they probably hate and don't want to be at, and are treating you like crap over the phone or don't know what the hell they're talking about. So back to what I was saying, around $540 had to be paid back, and I have to admire the efficiency on some level. We couldn't cure his metastatic brain cancer, but eventually somebody found that $540 within 72 hours of his death. So if you were ever worried about the government accountability, rest assured they located the bereaved mother. They recouped their $540. They are up to date within 3 days of Kingston passing away. I was Kingston's IHSS caregiver, which is in-home supportive services. That was my job because when somebody is that ill, that is a full-time job. Hospice overlapped during part of his end of life care, which resulted in roughly $1,200 in overpayments that I did not know I couldn't claim hours for when our hospice nurse would stop by for 5 minutes to drop off equipment. I wasn't allowed to claim those hours. And so I was penalized. And then 2 weeks later, they withdrew that $1,200 on top of the $600 I was already overdrawn. And by 2 weeks out from the day Kingston died, I was overdrawn $2,000 and no money to buy an urn. I still had a living child, rent to pay. I'm still paying hospital bills and therapy bills. I owe them more than $500,000 combined. And that's just medical stuff. That doesn't include the $7,000 that we had to spend on hotels down in San Diego while he was getting radiation treatment that didn't even work. That doesn't include the gas, driving back and forth from LA to San Diego. It was an insane amount of money for it to fail. I laugh about it because hundreds of thousands of dollars to lose. All of that work, all of his fight, all of the time, all of the faith, and all of the money. I can't believe it didn't work. I cannot believe that the end result was that he is never coming back, that he's gone. I need people who have never cared for a dying child at home to understand what hospice actually looks like, because hospice can create this picture, this idea that there's a team of professionals that move into your home and they're with you all the time and you become emotionally devastated, but operationally relieved. That is so far from the truth. I remember Kingston's dad really thought that's what hospice did, is that they were going to be there 24/7 taking care of him bedside. No, they stopped by. Actually, I have like a group of 3, which for me, I was like, hell no. I expected one person. So I ended up having like a whole fiasco to work out, where I eventually ended up with this incredible hospice nurse who understood that if I'm going to lose the pay for you being in my home for 1 hour a week, just don't come. So the nurse would come, she would be there for 5 minutes, the nurse took vitals, and then she would leave. I was still his mother. I am still his caregiver. I was still there when his abilities disappeared. I was there managing everything that was happening. I was there when his breathing changed, and I was there when his heart stopped. But administratively, there was an overlap, so there was money to pay back. There are so many bills medically and for rehabilitation, so much debt. I actually still get phone calls today about the wheelchair that insurance paid for, but somehow they still want $700 for it. I don't get it. Circumstances where money deposited into an account can immediately become money that somebody else is legally entitled to in 2 seconds. That's why when people help me now, I sometimes ask them to just pay the company directly, or don't use GoFundMe because that goes straight to my bank account that has a lien against it. There's a garnishment attached to it. Because imagine telling people that you need grocery money and gas, so somebody sends you $50, but before you can purchase the gas and the groceries, it was taken and applied to an old debt that accumulated while your now dead child was receiving life-sustaining medical care. This is not a hypothetical situation that I invented for dramatic effect. It does not only happen to just me and my family. This happens to any family who is not sitting there Googling what happens with the money while you're just trying to spend their last days as a family. But this has been my life experience for the last 2 years. The spreadsheets have all survived. Our government is right on top of recouping any overpayments. It's incredible the things that the government can accomplish and that these systems accomplish when it serves them. The gaps that exist make me sick. So because we're safely past the first 10 minutes of the episode, means anybody who previously objected to me saying fuck has had ample opportunity to become emotionally invested before I violated their standards of conversation. Because I just have to say that all of the stuff that I've said so far is fucking insane. And here's where I apparently have to present the evidence that I have attempted to find gainful employment, because being a grieving mother is not sufficient. You must also submit your resume to the jury. You must appear. You must try. I have applied more than 1,000 jobs just in the last 3 months. I mean, literally more than 1,000 resumes sent. I have rewritten my resume so many times that I don't even recognize my own career. I've adjusted keywords, written cover letters, followed up network, applied above my experience, below it, and directly inside of it. I've actually opened Indeed so frequently that I believe that we're common law married by now. And frankly, it should be contributing towards my existence and helping me pay my bills. I do believe eventually that there will be a job that I'm qualified for, and I will get it. I find a job that I am uniquely overqualified for, see that it was posted 6 hours ago, and discover that 400 people have already applied for that job. Welcome to the Hunger Games Business Casual Edition. The prize? Health insurance if you win. If you even get the interview. I've gotten more rejection letters. I should have applied for jobs as a teenager to get comfortable with rejection. I have professional experience as a paralegal, an executive assistant in motion picture studios. I have navigated years of pediatric cancer, insurance appeals, prior auths, disability programs. I've done IEPs, medical equipment. I know how to navigate specialists, hospitals, and treatment decisions. I can build a nonprofit from scratch. I can write a book. I can build my own website now. I produced this show all by myself. In case you can't tell. I've also cleaned strangers' toilets for an extra $20. And I'm not saying that as though cleaning houses is beneath me. Cleaning is legitimate work. The problem was that I became so desperate to prove that I wasn't being lazy or picky that I stopped evaluating whether or not the actual work made any financial sense or even helped me. I once drove 32 miles each way for somebody to pay me $42. 64 miles for $42. I have a 2010 Subaru. It's $80 to fill up the gas tank, and a quarter tank is gone in 60 miles. I'm in Los Angeles traffic. Gas is $6 a gallon. Maybe $5.80 if I'm lucky. It's insane. It doesn't make sense what I've been trying to do to prove to my community and to the people that think I shouldn't still be asking for support that I'm not lazy, that I'm not uneducated, that I'm not being picky, that I'm not milking my situation. It's crazy the things that I feel like I have to prove. By the time that I drove to the job, did the work, and drove home, I had essentially spent several hours performing the economic equivalent of jogging on a treadmill while somebody just sat there and removed dollar bills from my purse. But I worked. Nobody could call me lazy. And at that point, psychologically, that felt like it mattered more than the money because I felt like I had to be present and actively showing people that I was trying. Research has actually shown that employment disruption is a major part of cancer's financial toxicity. The NCI reports that roughly a quarter of cancer patients in large surveys say that their caregivers made significant employment changes because of the cancer, reducing their income by more than half. A pediatric cancer study found substantial household hardship across income levels, with 17% of caregivers reporting income losses greater than 60%. That's 17% to be reduced by 60%. That's a lot of people within the cancer community. And just so you know, these numbers don't magically correct themselves after bereavement. I found one study recently done that compared parents of children who passed away from cancer with parents that were bereaved for other reasons. And the parents whose children died from cancer had 50% more risk of long-term sick leave and unemployment and substantially lower odds of finding work within the first 2 years after their child's death. I am currently just a little over 2 years out. So again, this doesn't excuse every financial decision that I've ever made. I've definitely made stupid financial decisions in the past, and I'm sure I'll make another one before this episode uploads because consistency matters, but context matters too. And of course, just when I got multiple interviews lined up, they were finally happening, and I thought maybe one of those 1,000 applications was finally going to not be for nothing, that there might be a job to come out of it. I had to go to the emergency room and have emergency surgery, and I am now out for at least another 4 weeks. I really thought that I had some miserable gastrointestinal problem. I just wanted some fluids, antibiotics, and a lecture because I waited too long, and then they would send me home. But instead, I was admitted for emergency surgery. I earned myself 5 different incisions because I believe that I am made from construction equipment. I had invented a recovery timeline where I could have abdominal surgery, sleep overnight, come home, complain dramatically for about 48 hours, and then resume my normal programming. Apparently, I thought that abdominal surgery was basically like getting your eyebrows waxed. It was unpleasant. You'd be tender, immediate regret. But then, of course, you could send some emails, drive, maybe go for a walk. But no, it turns out your abdominal muscles are involved in exactly every human activity, even breathing. Getting up hurts, sitting down hurts, rolling over hurts, sleeping hurts. Coughing feels like somebody filed a formal complaint against my actual organs. My belly button looks like I've been punched at least 10 times. It's wild how terrible it looks and how bad it feels. I never would have known. Kingston actually had this same surgery, and he did not look like this. So I don't know why, but it did not go as great as I thought it would be. I was told to expect around 4 weeks to be out, 4 weeks of recovery, which means different things depending on what life you're returning to. If you have a stable job and savings and paid time off, 4 weeks is inconvenient. You may lose a little income. But if you're already unemployed and you're already financially underwater, you're already interviewing for the job that's supposed to get you out of that situation, and you're already calculating which bill can survive being ignored for God knows how long, because I don't know where I'm getting my next any amount of money. 4 weeks is exactly terrifying. I genuinely had hoped that the interview that I was going to have the day that I had surgery would be the one that actually hired me, because they seemed like they wanted to move really fast. And even in that math, you still have to work for 2 weeks before you get paid for those 2 weeks. So we were still looking at mid-September. So that gets us up to speed. That's where I'm at today. I'm 4 weeks out before I can move capably. And funny thing is, I tried to reschedule that interview that I missed. And the first question they asked me was, are you physically able to, it was actually weird the way they asked it. Are you capable work? I don't know, like it wasn't politically correct. I'll tell you that. They basically just wanted to know, like, are you crippled is what it sounded like. But that's where I'm at. And needless to say, even though I said, oh yeah, I'm good next week, no response. But let's get into cars. I got to talk about this Uber situation, because every time I explain my financial problems to somebody, inevitably they discover Uber, DoorDash, and Instacart on my behalf. Have you considered DoorDash? No. What is this futuristic service that you speak of? Please explain. Please solve my problems with this incredible idea you have. I sound like an asshole, but I was driving a Ford Explorer that was eventually repossessed. It was a dying 2013 SUV, bald tires, the wires were popping out, bad brakes, I had no insurance, badly expired registration, and a $509 a month payment with 30% interest that I really couldn't afford. It was also essentially 7 years of Kingston's medical history in the backseat. Hospital trips, rehabilitation treatment, snacks crushed into impossible places, vomit stains, probably urine. Nothing preserves automotive resale value quite like chemotherapy vomit embedded in your upholstery. Eventually, people did help so much that I was able to buy a 2010 Subaru from my cousin for $3,500. But I still owe him $800. I raised $2,800, and I was supposed to pay him off by April. It's August. I have not paid him since I got the car from him in December, and he is understandably not delighted. He sold me a car, we had a plan, and he did not accidentally enroll in a long-term charitable automobile program. The windshield is cracked. Gas is about $100 a week depending on where I'm going. I think there may be an exhaust leak though, because every time I get in it, long drives with the windows closed, I get violently ill. But I can't afford to have it properly diagnosed because I haven't even been able to pay it off. So my automotive safety protocol is essentially roll down your windows optimism. And this is apparently the vehicle from which I'm supposed to launch my gig economy empire, driving for Instacart and DoorDash and Uber. Nobody's going to get in my car. I don't want to be the person that's responsible for somebody getting carbon monoxide poisoning. A lot of people ask me why I don't just move back home. There's this internet solution that suggests that I should move back to Seattle because I have family there. Having people that you are biologically related to in a geographic region is not the same as having an efficient support system. There is no giant Navarro compound sitting up in Washington with complimentary housing, on-site childcare, and a committee waiting for me to finally stop being stubborn and just move back home. The people who could realistically help, they have jobs or they're older. They have obligations, they have their own issues, and they are busy living their lives. they can help maybe like one weekend a month, but there's nobody to just take me in. Michael doesn't have some giant support system either. His parents have never even met our children. Here, Zuma at least has people that she knows, friends that have become family, familiar adults. She has her cheer community, the small collection of humans that functions as family for her. I could, yes, move to Seattle. But essentially what would be happening is that I would be broke, isolated, and wet. At least here, I'm broke with superior weather. At least the sunshine makes me happy. Does that make sense? I hope that it does. There's really no way to explain that any further. And speaking of the things internet believes poor children shouldn't have, yes, Zuma is still enrolled in competitive cheer. Her tuition is $355 a month for 3, sometimes 4 days a week. And now I understand how that looks. If I saw a woman online saying that she needed help buying toilet paper, and then I saw her driving to Palm Springs for cheer camp, there's absolutely a version of me that would think, girl, we may need to revisit this budget. But that was me before and me today. I would not pass that judgment ever again. I have been humbled in that way. So I understand the question. Kingston was only 1 year, 1 month, and 3 days older than Zuma. They grew up believing that they were twins. For all of the childhood that she can remember, Kingston was sick. He had cancer. He was disabled. She lived in hospitals. She's been there for surgeries. She's pushed wheelchairs when she was 3. She helped administer medications. She helped change his bandage over his port. She watched him lose everything. She was there when he rehabilitated, and she held his hand as he was dying. She was 7. And the next morning, because life could be unbelievably cruel in the most mundane way possible, she woke up and was still a child who needed breakfast, and her birthday was coming up. School started 2 weeks later. So cheer is somewhere that Zuma gets to go and be Zuma. She's not Kingston's surviving sister. She's not the girl with the dead brother, not the child that adults look at with this sad tilted head, not the sibling of the boy who died. She is a girl in a gym getting corrected because her feet aren't together. She sweats. She gets frustrated. There's drama. She laughs with friends. She learns something. She gets better. And then she thrives. Somebody yells her name because she did something so great, not because they're worried about her. I do volunteer when I can to offset some of those costs. But sometimes the volunteer position is like $2 an hour. It really depends. Sometimes it's worth it. Sometimes it's basically slave labor. It's not an efficient system. Could I eliminate cheer from the budget? Yes. I have seriously considered it so many times, but it's the only thing she has that makes her happy right now. Poverty gives you an enormous number of opportunities to remove things from children who have already lost a lot. A spreadsheet didn't watch my daughter hold her dying brother's hand. I did. So yes, it affects my budgeting philosophy. And it sucks, but it's so good for her. She needs it. Now she's at this age where middle school is coming up and she starts next week. I have nothing for school clothes. I cannot afford school supplies. There's no birthday money set aside to throw her a party. I don't know what I can do at all, let alone a gift or a party. She has friends that she would like to take to an outdoor like water park thing. If I had a job, it would literally be no problem. There would be food, cake included, maybe some pizza, and maybe a tiny little gift. Maybe not even a gift. Maybe the party is the gift. I'm not trying to rent Beyonce. I just want my 11-year-old to know that she matters on her birthday. She really needs school supplies and school clothes. She's stepping into middle school and she needs clothes that fit. She does not have any pants that are long enough and fit in the waist. They don't exist. Ordinary expenses become completely different when there isn't any money for them. A backpack becomes a major decision. Shoes become a fight between parents. $44 can send somebody over the edge. Suddenly, I'm negotiating with myself over how many shirts constitute as a functional middle school wardrobe, while wondering why 6th grade mathematics requires enough office supplies to open a small branch of Staples. I don't want Zuma learning that needing ordinary things makes her expensive or a burden. She knows we don't have money. You cannot hide this level of broke from somebody who lives in the house, especially since we live within like 600 square feet. I don't want her deciding to not tell me she needs something because she heard me discussing the inability to pay something otherwise essential. She's already doing it. She wouldn't tell me when her tooth hurt because she didn't want me to have to pay for the dentist. I don't want her birthday wish becoming whatever she thinks costs the least. She has already lost enough and adjusted enough. And this is the part of the story that is probably the hardest for me to talk about. People ask me if I could just flip some of the things that I don't need anymore. Could I sell Kingston's Pokemon cards? I sold his entire collection. There were cards that were worth $1,000, several of them actually, and they are all gone. It's gonna make me cry. Toward the end of his life, the physical world became so small. He couldn't walk, he couldn't play sports. There weren't a lot of things that he could do that he enjoyed, but Pokemon cards didn't require any physical functioning. We could just sit there and open the packs. He would look at them, collect them, organize them, teach me about them. It was something that we did together when everybody else was asleep or when we were traveling. We would just drive around to different places looking for packs. And then he died. So I had these 4 bins of Pokemon cards. Most of the cool ones were organized in the way that he wanted them. And I laid them out and I took pictures and I sold every one of them while I was crying so hard that I couldn't breathe. There are parents whose children have died and their rooms are exactly the way they were the day they died. I know these parents. Their clothes are in their closets. The bed is unmade. The shoes are exactly where the kid left them. Things are still on shelves. I am not jealous that their child died too. There's no obvious premium membership tier in this shitty child loss club, but I wanted that. I didn't want to be evicted and have to pack up his things. I wanted to be able to go in the room where he used to play, where everything still smelled like him, and lay in his bed and snuggle his clothes and his stuffies and look at his artwork and his collections and his toys. And I wanted to be able to sit in that because he was gone. But when I was evicted, I lost so many of his belongings because I couldn't afford to preserve them. I couldn't afford the storage unit. And what remains in public storage right now in El Segundo is about to get a lien put against it. So the few things I have left, I can't even get access to. All of the bills I have, this one terrifies me the most because inside that storage unit are the few things that I have left that belong to Kingston that I didn't have to sell yet. I hate that word. Yet. But that's the honest word. There is a point where I'm going to probably have to sell what I have to put gas in the car. I didn't have gas to get to the emergency room. I thought we were going to break down. There are also household things in there that I could use if I could ever afford my own apartment again. I sold our kitchen table during the eviction because I needed the money for a moving truck. So the table that Kingston and Zuma and Michael and I would have our meals at, it's gone. The one Kingston sat at, I'll never sit at that table again. Our family, it's just those memories had to pay for the movers because I was evicted. It's just, I sound like I'm complaining and I'm not complaining about stuff. It's material stuff. I get that. But it's the memories attached to those things. I can't go sit in the spot where he used to sit. He died in my bed, in my bedroom at our old house. But because I got evicted, I can never sit where he took his last breath. I actually freaked out the new renters, the new residents that are renting it now, because he and I planted a lemon tree in the front yard and it almost died. And he taught me how to bring it back to life. And one day I was so sad. I showed up in tears in the front yard, begging for them to let me pick some lemons. I want that tree back so bad. It actually makes me so angry. Back to the table. It was just a place. It sounds material and silly, but it was a place where the 4 of us sat and played games, argued over something silly, did art. He probably threw up on it. I don't know. But I needed the truck more than the table. So I sold it. Which means that when I say I am putting everything on the table in this episode, we're going to have to refer to a metaphorical one because apparently even my metaphors have been liquidated. I try to make light of it by making jokes. Sometimes it works. Sometimes it just makes me more sad. So yeah, I sold the fucking table. Sorry. That one got me. So then there's the question of Kingston's dad, Michael. What are we? Why doesn't he help more? What's the deal there? Well, legally, Michael and I have been divorced since 2019, and he has been in other relationships, and I have lived independently of him off and on for some time, and we keep trying to make things work. But since November of 2025, we moved back in together, and I essentially have been financially dependent on the man that I'm divorced from, who, depending on the day, doesn't like me very much. So if somebody thinks that I have somehow engineered an enviable lifestyle for myself, I would like you to spend several minutes with that sentence. I'm 45 years old, asking my ex-husband for money for basic things like toilet paper. There's no empowering Pinterest quote for that. Even if we were madly in love, I have to ask him for money. Michael helps a lot, more than a divorced ex would help most. You know, it's just that he's rare. He's a rare person, okay? He has paid for things that he technically is not responsible for. He has kept me afloat for the sake of Zuma, but he cannot indefinitely financially support 2 adults, 1 child, and all of this old debt and everything that cancer left behind on his 1 income. Money lives inside every conversation when you don't have enough of it. I asked for $44 and it ruined the whole day. How much of that stops sounding like a neutral question when you already feel like a total burden, like you're worthless? $20 becomes extremely emotionally loaded. Groceries start to feel like an expense report. Every sigh when a bill arrives sounds like an indictment of your existence, even when the person sighing may literally just be tired or sad. I need my own income. I want my own money, obviously. I really just want independence. I want Michael's paycheck to go to Michael so that Michael can have relief and nice things for himself, and for him to be able to spend that money on the nice things and fun things that Zuma needs. I want to buy the good shampoos so my hair doesn't break off. I have a mullet for using crappy stuff. Our relationship already contains so much stress without adding that financial pressure. We've tried working things out again and again, but this is not this adorable movie where tragedy reunites divorced parents and we hold hands and skip off into the sunset. That is the wrong movie. Some days we care very deeply about each other, and other days I am certain he does not like me. Some days I don't like him. Some days all 3 happen before lunch. But there are parts of our relationship that I don't make public because despite the previous half hour of evidence, I do actually believe that some people are entitled to privacy in certain parts of their lives. So I'll tell you this, the part that matters here is that I was Kingston's primary caregiver. I researched treatment, I talked to doctors, I compared the trials, I asked questions, I signed forms, and I made decisions. And Michael allowed me to do that because he trusted me. I had spent years becoming an expert in a subject that I would have happily remained completely ignorant in if I could trade it for a healthy child. But the 1 clinical trial we did failed so miserably, it actually, I'm convinced it's the reason he died as fast as he did. I absolutely blame myself. The rational part of my brain knows that metastatic medulloblastoma killed Kingston, but the mother in me, the person that was supposed to keep him alive, struggles. I know I didn't create the cancer. I did not control its genetic makeup or its biology. There wasn't a guaranteed cure sitting behind door number 3 that I missed because I'm a fucking idiot. I know that. The mother part of my brain doesn't particularly care what the rational part already knows. It just knows that I somehow failed to keep him alive. That's the part that still asks whether or not I chose wrong. Should I have not done the trial? Did I do the wrong treatment? Did I do something wrong that caused this to be worse or happen faster than it otherwise would have? Was it the wrong time, the wrong hospital, the wrong treatment? Did I make this worse? Was I the reason that we are in the situation we're in now? I can't help but ask those questions. There was anger and blame and guilt because two parents who lose a child after years of medical trauma, your brain desperately search for a reason, a definitive reason why all of this happened. But there isn't one. At the very end of Kingston's life, Michael and I did not agree. There was no treatment left that was going to cure him. That's so important to know. We weren't deciding whether or not Kingston would live and how we were going to keep him alive. We were deciding what the end of his life would look like for all of us. A feeding tube potentially could have prolonged his life, and Michael wanted him in the hospital with the nutrition and the medical support taking care of him. And I totally get why. He wanted more time with his son, and he didn't want us to be tortured with those memories later of the hard parts. And of course he wanted that. I, on the other hand, had spent so much time with Kingston, and Kingston had told me while we were traveling back and forth that when he was done, he never wanted to go back to the hospital. He had already given his entire childhood to the hospital. He wanted to be at home. He wanted to be where his mom and dad would be sleeping, where he could play with his sister without needing permission, where his friends could come visit, because in a hospital, they would not have been allowed to visit the way that they did at the end. He wanted his family, his friends, his bed, familiar things, his games, and I promised him that I would honor that. So I cared for him myself at home. Michael and I both have to live with those decisions that were made during an impossible situation where neither one of us could have what we really wanted, because what we wanted was for him to not die. That option was gone. It was never going to happen. So people wonder why a family doesn't simply bounce back. Bounce the fuck back to what? He's gone. My old career, the years I would have normally spent building that career were spent trying to just keep him alive and give him a life worth living. My old finances, we spent more than $500,000 out of pocket. My old family, one of my children is dead. My old marriage, we divorced years before Kingston died. There is no reset button to where I returned to the save point before pediatric cancer. Someone I didn't know responded to something that I wrote and essentially asked whether or not I expected to have endless support from the community and if I was going to be a survivor or a victim. Except I haven't even been talking about money. I was actually talking about giving grieving parents grace, about why bereaved people are constantly instructed to give everybody else around them grace. Friends disappear because your grief makes them uncomfortable. Give them grace. Someone forgets the death anniversary. Give them grace. Someone says something so spectacularly stupid about your dead child. Well, they meant well. Give them grace. Everything happens for a reason comes out their mouth. Give them grace. Someone who has never buried a child explains how you should grieve yours. Apparently, we're at Costco and grace is available in bulk. I asked why some of it never seems to make the return trip. How did that become a referendum as to whether or not I'm a victim? This woman doesn't know what time I wake up. She doesn't know how many applications I send out. She doesn't see me cleaning strangers' toilets, which, by the way, was pretty bad, for less than minimum wage. She didn't see any of that. She didn't see me bawling my eyes out, hyperventilating as I had to let go of his Pokemon cards. She didn't know about the storage unit that held all of his stuff that got auctioned off because I couldn't pay for it. She didn't watch me sell our kitchen table that they had colored on. But there's this strange bargain of being vulnerable online. I give people pieces of my life by choice because I believe that there is something to it. But they build the missing rooms themselves. Like they start putting a puzzle together with pieces of their own that aren't actually a part of the puzzle. I'll accept my part in all of this because I share enough that people can understandably probably think they know more than they do. After all this, now I feel like I can tell you what I really need without handing you a list that sounds like I opened a GoFundMe themed utility company. I posted in the description essential bills that I am desperate to pay. I need money for my storage unit that contains the rest of Kingston's belongings. I've already lost and sold enough. I don't want to lose that. Post-surgery medications, I need $300 for my medications. My cell phone is already past due. Zima starts middle school literally next week, and she needs school supplies and clothes. And a week after that, it's her birthday. Her cheer tuition is $355 a month. My internet is about to get turned off. Gas is $100 a week. We also need to eat. And then I still owe my cousin $800 for the car, who literally texts me every day, hey, where's my money? There's also the insurance, the windshield, and our glamorous supporting cast of toilet paper, shampoo, and conditioner. All kind of essentials. I would love deodorant. I promise you, this is temporary. And at some point, all of the rambling I do online, the things that I'm saying will fall into the right room or on the right ears, and we'll be able to do good in a way that will make anybody who has helped us feel like it was worth it. So my ask here at the end of all this is, if you can donate to help us get through this next month, we sure could use it. If you could share this episode, share our GoFundMe, help with some of the expenses, help with the nonprofit so I can help other families. If you have a full-time job with reasonable compensation, that is always my preferred solution. I would love nothing more than to be able to accept the direct deposit package. I know how exposed this episode makes me. I know that someone can listen to 35 minutes of this and decide that I'm irresponsible. Someone can decide that Cheers should go, and someone could decide that I need to move again. I have already conducted most of that prosecution against myself, though. I'm like literally so many steps ahead of you. There are mornings when I look at my own life and I just think, Jesus Christ, Miley, get your shit together. I cry every day. I don't want to be this person. I usually arrive at the judgment before most of the people in my comments. I also know what I have done. I know how many years that I spent caring for Kingston and doing exactly what I was supposed to do. I don't regret that. I never will. I know how much we spent trying to give him a life worth living. I know what I sold. I know how many applications I've turned in, how many resumes I've rewritten, how many phone calls I've made, how many times I've updated GoFundMe, to the point where most of you are writing me asking me to take you off my list. By the way, that's a GoFundMe thing. I don't have your email. I don't know how, but once you donate, I can just send updates. So you're gonna have to Google that and figure out how to get off that list. I know that Michael has done so much for me. I know that Zuma has lost so much. And I know that I'm definitely still trying. None of us are over here just giving up. I don't expect anybody to support us forever. I want my financial stuff to be so normal and boring. I want to tell you I got the job. I want to tell you that I got all my meds and that I'm healed up and that I'm rocking and rolling, that the storage unit is safe. I want to tell you that I bought Zuma's birthday present with my own money. I want to tell you that I went to Ralph's and bought toilet paper, shampoo, and conditioner all at once without having to count my change. I want to be boringly solvent. I want a $200 surprise to piss me off instead of making me look around and wonder if there's anything left to sell, because I literally signed up to sell my plasma. Until I get there, though, I will keep applying. I'm going to be interviewing. I will keep writing books. I will keep making the show. I will keep building the nonprofit, because I know firsthand what families need after pediatric cancer, including after the child dies, when everybody assumes that we should be back to normal and the financial emergency has ended. The research says it doesn't end when the child dies. My bank account certainly concurs. I'm telling you this right now because right now helping myself requires doing something I absolutely hate, admitting that the effort that I'm putting out isn't enough to cover what we owe. And if you're hiring, for the love of God, hire me. Look at what I can do. And if I don't know how to do it, I can learn it. To every person who has already helped us, especially the people who saw my name pop up in their email again and thought, Jesus, what now? Same, guys. That is also essentially my reaction every time I send an update. I know that people have carried us through things that they have never had an obligation to carry us through. I know some people gave us money that they didn't even have, that they needed for themselves. And I know people continued to show up after our story wasn't new and there was no hope left for Kingston. I know that, and I do not take that casually. I am so grateful. One day I will be able to show you personally, individually, and collectively what I was able to accomplish because you helped us. But I'm asking again because this is where I actually am. I need enough help to get through the next 4 weeks, to keep the phone and the internet on so I can keep looking for work. I just want to keep life as stable as I can for the kids that are still here. And honestly, I need it for myself. I wanted to put everything out there on the table. If I'm going to keep asking, I feel like you all deserve a very transparent explanation of what you're investing in and what you're helping me with. But I don't actually own a table anymore. I sold it when I was being evicted to pay for that moving truck. So for now, you'll have to accept all of my baggage being delivered and laid out across my imaginary, invisible, metaphorical table. I just need enough help right now that I don't have to sell anything else this week. I would like to not sell Kingston's things while trying to save myself. And if this works, Maybe my next completely irresponsible purchase can be buying back that fucking table.
I've been learning how to live with what I can't undo. Some days I break, some days I break through. I still talk to the parts of me that hurt the most. Somehow I'm standing even when I feel like a ghost. I do not need a miracle, I just need room to breathe. I am still here, honestly, I'm fine. Even when it hurts inside, I'm still here, still alive, honestly, I'm fine. My voice shakes, let it shake. If my heart breaks, let it break. I don't have to get it right every time, honestly, I'm fine. Yeah, been broken, got messed up, bleeding out. I made wrong turns, I hit dead ends, got turned around. Hard lessons I'm learning, I'm crashing, I'm burning, stumbling my way through this hell. Got lost, went dark, got saved, had to lose it all so I could find myself. This is my story, this is my life. I am still trying, honestly,